Hello again, and welcome back to Illegally Cited. This is Jesse, aka BGFH, and I'm back again for another VR experience spotlight video. This time we're looking at another passive experience I had heard about in a few different places. I came to the Oculus store a little while back and finally getting around to taking a peek at it. I hope this doesn't just qualify as copyright. I mean, there's nothing really interactive to it. But again, just showing the whole VR, the 360-degree nature of everything, and with all the craziness going on right now, it still seems sadly oddly relevant. We are looking at an experience called Traveling While Black, and um, you can probably kind of tell just by the name what it is going to be about. But yeah, it's kind of going to how, it's talking about how there is still some segregation and racism stuff going on, people being targeted, people being just afraid to, go out and do things because, like, oh, I might get arrested or I might get killed or whatever. That's kind of what this is about, a little bit of historical thing, a little bit of, you'll see. Let's just hit play and here we go. I am going to, so we're loading right now. I'm going to slide this up here. There we go. Sit in a little more comfortable chair for this one. Because I know there's no interactivity. There we go. This is an Oculus Studios thing. Can't really see too much yet. Just some, we won an award thing there. I recognize that. Traveling While Black. A little video clip here.
The Negro Motorist Green Book, first published in 1936, was a critical guide for African Americans traveling during the 40s, 50s, and early 60s. It was created by a Harlem postal worker, Victor Green, and his colleagues who gathered a listing of restaurants, bars, hotels, and private homes that welcome black travelers across the country. In a time where Americans started hitting the road, African Americans faced restrictions as they traveled. Although you could purchase a car, you couldn't get gas, stay in hotels, or eat in restaurants. Travel was difficult and dangerous. Ben's Chili Bowl at 1213 U Street, Washington, D.C. was originally a silent movie theater called the Minnehaha. It was later featured in the Green Book as a pool hall. Since 1958, Ben's Chili Bowl has continued the legacy of the Green Book, providing a refuge for the whole community.
So now it's kind of just went from the screen to where
I was born
faded into
in
the
Washington,
actual
D.C.
place
in 1939
outside.
in a segregated hospital. I lived in a segregated neighborhood, and I went to a segregated school. First, I didn't realize any difference because all the people around me looked like me, and I was comfortable with that until I realized that I was being discriminated against. We couldn't shop downtown at the major stores. You couldn't try on clothes.
No,
You
we're
couldn't
in the
try on
restaurant.
hats because
By the
if you
bar.
tried them on, they didn't want you to get grease on the hats. You know, we oil our hair. And our makeup is dark. And so they didn't want us to try on clothes because you might get makeup on the clothes. I remember being about 7, maybe 10 years old in Hecht's department store when a little girl called me a nigger and spat on me. And I couldn't retaliate. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. I was so angry inside, but I couldn't do anything about it because I knew that it would be blamed on me.
Okay, we're at the table
The Green
here.
Book was a guide for African Americans to travel safely, to find shelter, food, and gas in a time when these basic rights were not guaranteed.
Actually, the tracking is a little
Washington,
bit odd. Let
D.C.
me
had more
back over
listings
here.
in the Green Book than any other
sit
city
in my
in
other
this
chair again
country.
because it's...
The 1213 U Street was listed in
There
the
we
Green
go.
Book, and that's why we're sitting here in Ben's Chili Bowl at 1213 U Street today. From the
Tracking was a
very
little
day
bit
that we
messed up, I
opened up to
noticed.
the current time, it's still a safe haven for people. And we invited the community in, and we started with the neighborhood young men that thought this was home for them. They always sat over there in that corner. There was always 6, 8, 10 of them
Small place.
every evening from different walks of life in the community. When someone spilled something on the floor and their staff was busy, one of them took care of it, would go in the back, get them up. If we were running out of ice, I'd say, hey, Joe, go get some ice for me, kind of place. That was the beginning of the building of a relationship with this community. These young guys that found this to be home. As soon as they started to broadcast professional basketball, put the TV up for them to keep them here, so they wouldn't have to go see that game someplace else. We didn't have TVs in Ben's Chili Bowl, but that was for them. And that brought in that segment of our community. And then, of course, this being the strong, close-knit community that it was, when you came here for a chili dog, you ran into a friend.
I think... Okay. Now we're not in the restaurant anymore. We got a video clip up there. We're in a whole
Particularly
kind of
in the
different environment.
early
It's
50s.
quiet.
When we would leave Washington, D.C. on the train, we could sit anywhere on the train until you got to the Virginia line. And when you get to the Virginia line, you had to go to the last train on the back. And I remember being so frustrated because we could not eat on the highway. If the train stopped, we couldn't eat. We couldn't relieve ourselves on the train. You either had to hold it or relieve yourself sitting there, and then you're wet when the train stopped. You would get off the train and you would relieve yourself outside, almost like you would if you were a dog. And that's the way, basically, I thought that white people felt about me as a black African American or Negro woman or whatever, nigger woman or whatever, that they felt like I was not human, not a human being, that I was less than a human being. I see people treat their dogs better now. Right now, they treat the dogs better than they treated us as black Americans.
Well, you know, one of the
Now we're
things
back
that
in the
I
restaurant
remember was
in a second,
traveling
I
from
think.
Southwest Georgia down to Mississippi. And this was right after Miss Hamer had been beaten. I mean, they dragged her off the bus and beat her. And, you know, I mean, crippled her. And one of the things that I remembered on that bus, I felt that two things. First, I had to sit in the front of the bus, just like you. But second, I also was in my head saying, you know, what am I going to do if these people come on the bus and try to treat me like Miss Hamer? And one of the things I was very clear about is that I was not getting off the bus and going to any of these places to try to use the bathroom. I was not going to get off the bus to try to try to get anything to eat. I knew enough to pack a lunch before I got on that bus. Now, it was a 10-hour ride from Albany, Georgia, down to Jackson, Mississippi. But I mean, it was, it was really tough trying to not only deal with the question of where you're going to go to the bathroom, where you're going to go eat, but whether if you exercised your right under the law, whether somebody was going to come off there and try to assault you. That was a
Now we're on the
reality that
bus,
we
in
wanted
between the
to
aisles
change.
here.
I mean, I remember I was maybe 14 years old
Not many
when
people
I
on
started seeing the challenge, the real challenge in Montgomery
Almost near
with
the
the bus
back here.
boycott, with Rosa Parks. Just in terms of local transportation and interstate transportation, we had to face people telling us, "You not good as we are." And now, because of
Back in the
people
restaurant.
who got on the bus and challenged, the institutions that were developed, you can dream big. You can dream bigger than we could dream. Was important. I mean, the biggest thing that we were able to do, and Frank can tell you this, the biggest thing we were able to do is we were able to say, you cannot block our dreams. Now, we couldn't say what our dreams were, but we could say, you can't block our dreams. You can't tell us what we can't do.
Another
We're
video
going to
clip
kick
of
down
some
all
cars.
these barriers. Those barriers could be life-threatening. Every trip through America for a black person during those times was potentially fatal.
Getting patted down.
It seemed like many
By a
people were
cop.
out to hurt us or even kill us just because we're black.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh. Shaky cam footage there.
The assumption is at some time it stopped. And that's not the case. It never stopped.
Yeah, now we're getting into
That's
the
a
modern.
continuous thing. That hasn't changed since the beginning of the relationship that exists here between blacks and whites in the United States. It's like a river that keeps flowing, and we don't really see all of it, but at the end of the day, it's something that started back in slavery and continues today. Young black people don't have the green book in front of them, but they have it in their head. Well, you're no longer looking at, no Negroes allowed and stuff like that, but you're looking at the same thing which says, these are barriers here, and then people feel that if you cross these barriers, they have a right to kill you.
Tamir was such a energetic kid, At 12 years old, he would actually get up in my arms as big as he was and let me hold him and kiss him and squeeze all on him.
Can't read that text, but it's another
So
introduction.
that day
there.
when you
Back
got
in the
knock on
restaurant,
the door,
interview here.
What happened?
So I was actually coming from the store and putting groceries up, and a knock came at the door. Two little boys
And everyone's just watching
told
us.
me that my son was shot by the police. And I was like in denial. I'm like, no, you're not talking about my kids. My kids is at the rec playing. And my oldest son was laying on the couch. He wasn't feeling well, but he ran out right past me. I guess he heard it in the little boy's voice. And he ran out before me, and I'm still trying to get my coat and my shoes on, talking about, my kids is playing. And surely enough, as I walk across the street around a little track where I could see the kids, my son is laying on the ground with 10 police officers surrounding him, and my daughter is screaming in the back of the police car. And they have my other son surrounded, and they put him in the back of the police car. So it was terrible. That's how that day turned out. The police asked me, when they asked me, they told me to calm down, or they were gonna put me in the back of the police car. Because I was trying to get to my son. They never let me get to him. They also let me ride in the front seat as a passenger.
Of the police car?
Of the ambulance.
Of the ambulance.
So I never even got a chance to get back, close to my son, to hold his hand, to kiss him and let him know that it was going to be all right. I don't know what they were doing.
So he was in the back of the ambulance and you were in the front.
Yeah, I was in the front like a passenger.
What kind of service were they giving Tamir at the scene?
I don't know because they were surrounding him.
They were surrounding him. And
I couldn't really see.
What were the officers doing? They were just standing there?
Well, they were just blocking me, not letting me go towards him and telling me to calm down. And I'm telling them, you need to let my kids out the car. They're minors and stuff like that. And like I told them, they gave me an ultimatum to stay at the scene of the crime with the other 2 children or to go with Tamir. I chose to go with Tamir, and I had to leave 2 children at the scene of a crime.
Okay, we're leaving there. Okay, we got another video clip here.
Everybody's seen what happened to my son. They didn't even want to release that tape. My attorney had to threaten them to release the tape, and after that tape was released, it just went worldwide.
What did you see on that tape? Like, what was your reaction to it?
My son was scared when they rolled up. He was scared, and he shrugged his shoulders like this. They tried to say he was reaching for his waistband. He wasn't reaching for nothing.
Like this.
When you roll up fast like that, you scared him.
Absolutely.
And that's what I see. My
He
son
was just
scared.
like stuck. He was just like,
Yeah, like what did I do?
Right.
Yeah, so that's I will never get that vision out of my head. That's devastating. I play it over and over again. Also with the picture of him laying on a gurney, and they would not allow me to touch him because they said he was evidence. So I didn't even get a chance to touch him or none of that.
So
no
last
kiss goodbye,
hug, kiss,
no nothing, no pillow, no nothing. So they said he was evidence, so I couldn't touch him. And I don't really know how that works.
what ultimately happened to Tamir's body?
So I had to get Tamir. Well, I didn't have to. I chose to get him cremated. I don't really think I told anyone that, but I don't want to leave my son in Cleveland when I leave Ohio. So I will be taking him and my mother with me. And I have them in urns in my house.
So to take him everywhere that you go,
Yeah.
every stage of the rest of your life.
Yeah, he has to go with me. Yeah, because he just has to go. I wasn't finished raising him, I wasn't finished nourishing him, and America robbed me. Yep, they robbed me.
So when people talk about the American dream, what do you call it?
A nightmare, especially if you're black. Yeah.
Now we're kind of just slowly going to be going into the restaurant. It's kind of dark. It's kind of a reddish
Traveling while
light.
black means to me that discrimination, segregation is still alive and well. And that even though I don't have to have the green book to guide me to a black person's house, and I can stay in any hotel I want, but just think about the people who have been killed while traveling black. A young man who was involved in the schools in the area where he lived, killed in front of his fiancée and their child, traveling while black. Traveling while black, I'm driving down the highway and the police decide to stop me. Even though I'm an elderly black woman, I could be killed just because I'm black and don't give them the answer that they want. traveling while black in America is still happening. And I am really frightened for black men traveling while black. I wonder, when does it end?
And there you go. That is the end of it. I mean, I really didn't want to interrupt the constant dialogue there, and even if I did, really, what else is there to say? You know, I mean, going in, you kind of knew that this was not going to be a joyful experience. You know, this is a VR documentary that touches on some pretty sensitive topics here. Like I said, especially with all the things that you've been hearing about the last few years, that just doesn't seem to be getting better. Yeah, I mean, what else is there really to say? It was an interesting documentary. I think that it was done really well. Again, that other layer of immersion, just sitting there in the booth, in the restaurant, listening to the people tell their stories, especially the last one with the mother there. I can't even imagine. Like I said, I remember coming back from, 2016? We literally, my friend and I were coming back from the ACB conference. We were taking a Lyft or an Uber or something home, and we ended up having to go around a detour because we didn't know what was going on at the time, but there was all kinds of commotion. There was all kinds of cops and just tons of stuff going on around there. And it was pretty damn close to my house, or to where I live. And we found out the next morning. I woke up and my friend had stayed overnight, and he goes, Jesus, you know why we had that detour? And that was when we saw the I can't remember his full name. I don't want to say it wrong. Castile, it was his last name. I forget how to say his first name. Fernando, something like that. Castile. Yeah, I mean, that was just right in my backyard, pretty much. It's like I go by there every day to work, and that's pretty freaky. But it is interesting to see these types of documentaries. Not everything has to be a video game. Not everything has to be, for fun. You watch funny TV shows, you watch scary shows, documentaries, whatever. VR, as it matures, you'll probably get to see a lot more of that as well. I would actually like to see something on disability. We've had a couple things that I've talked about where we've had like these brief simulator types of things, but like one thing that I would find interesting is like disability and employment. I've talked a little bit about that on the channel, but having and experiencing, I mean, granted, I don't have to worry about going out the door and getting killed. But, having something similar, or having something to where the and unemployment of people with disabilities, be it blind or hearing impaired or physically impaired, whatever it is. There could be a whole other interesting thing I could think of that would be an interesting documentary for there. So, yeah, I don't know. It just kind of, for whatever, it kind of made me, when it started, it kind of made me think of, the segregation and there are certain places you can't go. There are certain things you can't do. And that's the thing, is you had the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990, and, people think, oh, well, everything's all cool now. Well, we have it a heck of a lot better than we did. But there are still absolutely some frustrations, not necessarily to do with our disabilities, but to do with, people's perception of people with disabilities, people's low expectations, and that kind of thing. But anyway, that's a whole different topic. But it kind of just made me, watching this type of VR documentary gave me just kind of, that sort of popped in my head. So anyway, hope you guys found the video or found the VR experience interesting. So there's not really much else to say. Follow me on Twitter at BGFH79. And until next time, I will talk to you guys again later.